Have you ever felt completely invisible at your job? Like you give everything you have, only to be treated like you are nothing. My new boss called me dead weight in front of everyone I worked with for 22 years. I was completely broken and ready to quit, but he made one giant mistake. He had no idea the real owner of the company was secretly watching the entire thing. This is the story of how my worst humiliation led to the most unbelievable moment of justice you will ever see. Alright, let's get to the heart of this story. But before I do, make sure you hit that subscribe button for me. This is just one story, and believe me, you will not want to miss the ones that are coming up next. My name is Jack, but everyone on the long haul calls me Big Jack. I have 54 years on my back, and 22 of them have been with this one company, Pioneer Freight. To give you an idea of how long that is, when I first signed on, most people didn't even have the internet at home. We used paper maps and CB radios to talk, not smartphones with GPS. My first truck, a classic Peterbilt, didn't even have air conditioning. It was just me, the endless ribbon of the I-80 highway, and the lonely country songs playing on the AM radio. Through the long nights, Pioneer Freight was not the giant it is today. When I started, old Mr. Roberts, God rest his soul, ran everything from a tiny office with 2 desks and a wobbly ceiling fan that barely stirred the humid summer air. He made the calls to clients himself. He planned the routes. The whole fleet was just 5 trucks, all of them second-hand. Mine was a rig that had already crossed the country more times than I could count, but I treated it like it was fresh off the factory floor. I grew up watching my father behind the wheel, learning that being a trucker isn't just a job, it's a way of life. He taught me to respect the road, to take care of my truck like it was part of the family, and to never ever let a customer down. And that is exactly how I worked for all those years. I watched Pioneer Freight grow from 5 trucks to 80. I saw that tiny office turn into a 3-story building with central air. I saw the old trucks get replaced with brand new models with tracking systems and onboard computers, all these modern comforts. I saw Mr. Roberts' son take over and then leave after a big disagreement, and I saw his widow, Mrs. Martha, take control of everything, even if she rarely came down to the yard. I saw so many people come and go. Some became friends, others barely remembered my name, but I always stayed. Pioneer Freight was more than a job to me. It was my second family. I knew every crack in the pavement of that yard, every stain on the ceiling of the workshop. I knew the name of every mechanic, every person on the cleaning crew, every security guard at the gate. I was never one to call in sick. In 22 years, I missed work exactly 3 times. Once when I had a bad case of pneumonia, another time when my mother passed away, and once when my daughter was born. I even went to work sick sometimes. Maybe that was too much, but I was proud of it. I never got involved in arguments or gossip. My routine was simple: show up, get my dispatch order, check my truck, and hit the road. On my way back, I would deliver a full report, a full tank, in a clean truck. That was it. I was the guy the new drivers came to when they were in a bind. Go talk to Big Jack, they'd say he knows. If someone needed to know the best route through Chicago during rush hour, they asked me. If an engine was making a strange noise, they would call me over to have a listen. I sort of became the unofficial advisor. For a long time, Mr. Roberts treated me almost like a son. He used to say, "Jack, one day, this place will be half yours because of how much you care for it." He was exaggerating, of course, but it filled me with pride. When he passed away 5 years ago, I cried as if I had lost my own father. I was the living history of that place, and I thought my loyalty was a shield that would protect me forever. I was wrong. I was about to find out that sometimes the biggest threats don't come from the dangers on the road. They come from inside the very walls you helped build. That threat arrived in a shiny suit and with a fancy business degree. His name was Michael. He was hired to be the new operations manager. He was young, maybe in his early 30s, and he walked around the yard like he owned it, even though he had probably never even changed a tire in his life. The friendly atmosphere at Pioneer Freight vanished almost overnight. The morning coffee chats among drivers were replaced with tense silence. Michael saw us not as people, but as assets and liabilities on a spreadsheet. He called our years of experience on the road outdated instincts. He said the trucking industry was all about data, now about optimizing logistics and maximizing efficiency. He brought in new rules, new software, new digital checklists on tablets. We had to log everything digitally. For a lot of the older guys who were used to paper logs and a handshake, it was a nightmare. But it wasn't the technology that was the problem. It was the attitude that came with it. Michael had no patience. If someone was slow to learn the new system, he would sigh loudly and treat them like they were stupid. He would stand in the middle of the yard with his arms crossed watching us, and you could just feel his disapproval. A family feeling that Mr. Roberts had built was being dismantled piece by piece. Michael started cutting costs. He changed the brand of oil we used for the engines to save a few cents a gallon. He reduced the budget for truck washes. These were small things, but they sent a clear message. The pride we took in our rigs and power work didn't matter to him. All that mattered was the bottom line. I tried to stay out of his way. I did my job just like I always had. I learned the new software. I filled out the digital checklists. I kept my head down. But I could see the damage he was doing. Good mechanics started quitting. The morale among the drivers was the lowest I had ever seen. The place was becoming cold and heartless. I kept telling myself to just endure it, to just focus on the road. But I was about to learn that you can't just look the other way when someone is poisoning the well. My turn to be his target was coming. It all started with a routine delivery to Dallas, a trip I had made hundreds of times. Everything was going smoothly until a freak ice storm hit Oklahoma, turning the highway into a sheet of glass. I had no choice but to pull over and wait for the salt trucks. I did what I was supposed to do. I called logistics and informed them of the delay. They said they understood. But when I finally arrived back at the yard, 12 hours late, tired and stressed, I saw him waiting for me. Michael. He was standing near my parking spot with a clipboard in his hand and a look on his face that was pure thunder. I knew right then and there this was not going to be a friendly chat. I stepped out of my cab, my bones aching from the long hours, and he was on me before my feet even hit the pavement. "Where have you been?" He snapped, his voice sharp and loud enough for everyone in the yard to hear. I explained about the ice storm, about the highway being closed down. I told him I had called it in, that logistics knew about the situation. He just scoffed. "Excuses," he said, shaking his head. "All I hear from you old-timers are excuses. The world is moving on, Jack, but you are stuck in the past." He stepped closer to me, pointing his pen at my chest. "Let me be clear," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "This company is changing. We are building a modern, efficient fleet. And frankly, you are a dead weight, a relic, an anchor holding us back. You should have retired years ago." The entire yard went silent. I could feel dozens of eyes on me. My fellow drivers, the young helpers, the mechanics in the workshop, they all stopped what they were doing and stared. I felt a hot wave of shame wash over me. My face turned red. In 22 years of loyal service, no one had ever spoken to me like that. I wanted to say something to defend myself, but the words got stuck in my throat. I just stood there, frozen, humiliated. I felt like a little kid being scolded in front of the whole school. He wasn't done. He slapped his clipboard against the hood of my truck, making a loud crack that echoed through the silent yard. "This old way of doing things is over. We don't have room for sentimental baggage." Either you get with the program, or you get out of the way. He turned and walked away without another word, leaving me standing there in the middle of the yard, my dignity in pieces. I could feel the pity in the eyes of my coworkers. Some of them looked away quickly, pretending they hadn't seen anything. Others gave me a small, sad nod. No one said a word. The silence was deafening. I felt completely alone. For a moment, I just wanted the ground to open up and swallow me. But then I looked up. I looked past the watching eyes of my colleagues, past the tall floodlights of the yard, and I saw a flicker of movement in a window on the 3rd floor of the office building. It was the top floor, the executive floor, where Mrs. Roberts' office was. I couldn't be sure, but I thought I saw a silhouette standing there watching the whole scene unfold. Little did he know who was watching everything from above. The thought was fleeting, and I dismissed it quickly. Why would the owner of the company care about a single trucker being yelled at in the yard? But the image stuck in my head as I finally got back in my truck and drove it to its parking spot, defeated. You know, it is a gut-wrenching feeling. And it makes me wonder, has anything like this ever happened to you at your job? Tell me your story in the comments below. Sometimes just talking about it helps, and I will be reading what you have to say. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just kept tossing and turning in bed, replaying the scene of my humiliation over and over in my head. The words dead weight echoed in my ears. After 30 years of marriage, my wife Sarah knows me better than I know myself. She could tell something was deeply wrong. "What is it, Jack?" she asked, her voice soft with concern. "You look like you just swallowed a lemon." I tried to brush it off, saying I was just tired from the trip, but she didn't buy it. She kept gently prodding until I finally broke down and told her everything. The ice storm, the delay, the way Michael had screamed at me in front of everyone. As I spoke, the anger and shame I had bottled up all came pouring out. Sarah listened patiently, her expression growing more and more angry as I told her the story. "That's not right," she said firmly when I finished. "That's not just unprofessional. That's cruel. For a man who has given so much to that company, to be treated like that is a disgrace. You should quit." The thought had crossed my mind a dozen times. Maybe it was time to hang up my keys. Maybe Michael was right, and I was just an old relic. But quitting felt like letting him win. It felt like admitting he was right about me. Pioneer Freight had been my life for so long. The thought of walking away for good was painful. The next morning I drove to work with a heavy heart. My resignation letter was sitting on the passenger seat. I had decided Sarah was right. I couldn't work in a place where I was treated with such disrespect. My plan was to clean out my locker, turn in my keys, and walk away. But as I walked towards the main building, the receptionist stopped me. "Big Jack," she said, her eyes full of sympathy. "Mrs. Roberts wants to see you." My heart sank. This was it. Michael must have gone to her and complained. Now I was going to be officially fired before I could even quit. All my years of service ending with this final indignity. I walked up the 3 flights of stairs to the executive floor, feeling like a man on his way to the gallows. The hallway was quiet and carpeted a world away from the noisy, grease-stained workshop below. I knocked on the heavy wooden door of her office. "Come in," a calm voice said from inside. I took a deep breath and turned the handle, expecting to face a firing squad. I couldn't have been more wrong. The woman who was about to completely change the course of my life was waiting for me. Mrs. Martha Roberts was sitting behind a large mahogany desk. She was a small woman, probably in her late 60s, with perfectly styled gray hair and intelligent eyes behind a pair of elegant glasses. She motioned for me to sit down. "Mr. Jack," she said, her voice calm and steady. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." She spoke with a quiet authority that was more intimidating than Michael's shouting. I sat down, nervously clutching my hat in my hands. "I saw what happened yesterday in the yard," she said, getting straight to the point. "I was watching from my window." My mind raced. What did this mean? Why was she telling me this? "I am very sorry for the way Mr. Michaels spoke to you," she continued. "That is not how we treat our employees at Pioneer Freight, especially not one with your history here." I was speechless. After all the humiliation, hearing those words was like a soothing balm on a wound. But I still didn't understand where she was going with this. "But then, why didn't you say anything?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Why did you let him go on like that?" A small smile appeared at the corner of her lips. "Sometimes, Mr. Jack, you have to give someone enough rope to hang themselves." I didn't quite understand what she meant by that, but before I could ask, she continued. "The company has grown," she said. "The industry has changed. We have all this pressure to modernize, to become more efficient. And don't get me wrong, modernization is necessary. But not at any cost. Not by sacrificing the very things that got us here. Respect, loyalty, a job well done." As she spoke, I started to see a different side of her. This wasn't just the quiet widow of the founder. This was a sharp and observant leader. "You see, when my husband passed away, I had to step back for a while," she explained. "I let my son and the other directors run things. But I never stopped watching. I read the reports. I talked to the old-timers who retired. And I started to notice a change, a shift away from the values my husband held so dear. When we hired Michael, it was a test. I wanted to see how our people would react to a more aggressive style of management." "You tested us?" I asked, surprised. "In a way, yes," she admitted, her gaze steady. "I wanted to see who would hold on to their values under pressure, who would bend just to please the new boss, and who would simply continue to do their job with integrity no matter what. And you, Mr. Jack, you passed the test with flying colors." I was about to find out that she knew a lot more about me than I ever could have imagined. She reached over to her desk and picked up a thick binder. She opened it and started flipping through the pages. "I see here," she said, "that last March on your way to Denver, you found one of our new drivers, a young man named Tom, stranded on the side of the road with a blown tire. The report says you stopped and helped him change it, arriving 2 hours late to your own delivery, but you never mentioned Tom's situation in your official report to avoid getting him in trouble." My jaw dropped. How did she know that? It was true, but I had never told a soul. "I also know," she continued, "that in February of this year, you personally trained 3 new drivers on the difficult run through the Rocky Mountains, even though it wasn't your responsibility. You did it on your own time without asking for a dime of overtime." She kept going, pulling out more and more examples of things I had done over the years. Things I thought no one had ever noticed. Small acts of kindness and professionalism that I had done simply because it was the right thing to do. She knew about the time I had stayed late to help a mechanic fix a tricky engine problem. She knew about the time I had given a rookie driver my own packed lunch because he had forgotten his. I felt like she had a secret file on me, a file filled with all the good deeds I had ever done. "How do you know all this?" I asked, my voice filled with awe. She smiled again. "A good leader doesn't just look at the spreadsheets, Mr. Jack. A good leader looks at the people. I've been watching you for years. I've seen how the other drivers respect you. They don't respect you because you are their boss. They respect you because you have earned it. I saw it in the way you interviewed for the job all those years ago. There was something in your eyes, a quiet confidence, a deep sense of responsibility. That's why what happened yesterday was the final straw for me. I realized we don't need a manager who learned about trucking from a textbook. We need a leader who has lived it. We need someone who understands the heart of a trucker." She paused and looked me directly in the eye. "We need you, Jack." I was about to receive an offer that would feel more like a dream than reality. She leaned forward, her expression serious. "I want you to be our new head of operations." I just stared at her, completely stunned. Me, head of operations, but I'm just a trucker. I don't have a college degree. I don't know anything about management. She dismissed my objections with a wave of her hand. "You know more about trucking than anyone with a fancy degree ever will. You know what motivates a driver and what demoralizes them. You know the roads, the trucks, the customers. You can't learn that in a classroom, Jack. Over all these years, I've noticed something interesting about you," she continued. "You never sought the spotlight. You never asked for a promotion. But whenever there was a problem, people came to you. Whenever someone had a question, they consulted you. You are a natural leader, Jack, whether you realize it or not." She then opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out a white envelope. My name was written on the front. "I had planned to do this more formally, maybe with a ceremony," she said. "But after what happened yesterday, I don't think we can wait any longer." She handed me the envelope. Inside was a letter. It was an official offer for the position of head of operations. I read it in a daze. It detailed the responsibilities, the expectations, and then I saw the salary. It was more than double what I was making as a driver. With that kind of money, I could finally finish the renovations on our house, buy a new car. For Sarah, help my daughter more with her college tuition. "That's a lot of money, Mrs. Roberts," I mumbled, feeling almost embarrassed. "It's what the position is worth," she replied simply. "And it's less than what you deserve." I was overwhelmed. The man who had been called dead weight just 24 hours ago was now being offered one of the most important positions in the company. But I was scared. The fear of failure was a heavy weight in my gut. "What if I can't do it?" I asked honestly. "What if I let you down?" She looked at me with a confidence that I didn't feel myself. "I am not afraid of that," she said. "My only fear is that we are losing the spirit my husband valued so much. The spirit of hard work and mutual respect. I believe you are the only one who can bring it back. The decision is yours, Jack. I will respect whatever you choose. You will continue to be one of our best drivers with my full respect and admiration. But it would be a shame. I truly believe you can make a real difference in this position." My head was spinning. After more than 30 years on the road trading, the cab of my truck for an office with air conditioning seemed impossible. Going from driver to boss, from taking orders to giving them. It was a massive change. "All right, we are getting to the moment you have been waiting for. But before we continue, I just want to say, if this story has meant anything to you, so far hitting that like button would mean a lot to me. It is a small click for you, but it makes a big difference. Thanks for that. Now let me tell you what happened." Next, I went home that day with the offer letter in my pocket and a storm of emotions in my heart. When I told my wife Sarah, she just smiled. She wasn't surprised at all. "Of course they offered it to you," she said calmly. "It's about time someone recognized your worth." "But can I do it, Sarah?" I asked her. "Can I really be a boss? I am just a truck driver." She took my hands in hers and looked me straight in the eye. "Jack," she said with a conviction that shook me to my core, "you are already a leader. You always have been. The guys at the company respect you. They come to you when they have a problem. This just makes it official." She was right, as always. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in a long while. When I woke up the next morning, my decision was made. I arrived at the company early and went straight to Mrs. Roberts' office. She was already there, as if she had been expecting me. "I accept," I said simply as I walked in. She smiled a warm, genuine smile. She didn't seem surprised at all. "I knew you would," she said. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Jack. The first thing we need to do is make an official announcement. We have a general meeting scheduled for 9 this morning in the main warehouse. It will be the perfect opportunity." My heart started pounding again. An announcement in front of everyone, including Michael. What? Will people think I wondered? Some will be happy, she said as if reading my mind. Others will be jealous. Others will be confused. But the ones who matter will support you. And the rest don't deserve your concern. I walked to the warehouse feeling a mix of excitement and terror. The place was already filling up with employees. I was directed to a chair in the front row. A few minutes later, Michael walked in with his usual air of self-importance, scrolling through his phone. He was also shown to a seat in the front row, just a few chairs down from me. He gave me a quick nod without much interest, completely unaware of the bombshell that was about to drop. At 9 o'clock sharp, Mrs. Roberts walked onto the stage. Hey! Warehouse fell silent. She looked out at the crowd of faces and began to speak about the future of Pioneer Freight, about the importance of their values. And then she turned her attention to the issue of leadership. I have seen things that make me proud, she said, her voice firm, and things that concern me. I have seen examples of loyalty, hard work, and respect, but I have also seen arrogance, disrespect, and authoritarianism. At that moment, I noticed Michael shift uncomfortably in his chair. Mrs. Roberts' words were like arrows aimed directly at him. I have come to the conclusion that we need a leadership that embodies the values that made Pioneer Freight what it is today. Someone who knows every detail of our operation, who has lived the challenges of the road, who has earned the trust and admiration of his peers. The final moment of my incredible turnaround was about to happen in front of everyone. Therefore, Mrs. I. Roberts announced, her voice echoing through the warehouse. It is my duty to inform you that Michael is no longer with Pioneer Freight. A collective gasp went through the crowd. All eyes turned to Michael, whose face had gone completely white with shock. But she wasn't finished. And it is my great pleasure to announce that our new head of operations is someone you all know and respect. Mr. Jack. For a second, there was stunned silence. Then the warehouse erupted in applause. It started with a few of the older drivers, then spread like wildfire. Soon almost everyone was on their feet, clapping and cheering. I saw my friend Tom from the Denver route and another old-timer, Bill, clapping with huge smiles on their faces. I saw the ladies from logistics with tears in their eyes. Even the new guys who barely knew me were applauding. Michael just sat there, frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. Rs. Roberts motioned for me to come up to the stage. I walked up on shaky legs and shook her hand. She handed me the microphone and stepped aside, leaving me in the spotlight. I looked out at all those familiar faces, my colleagues of so many years, some surprised, some smiling, some still clearly confused. I took a deep breath. I didn't have a prepared speech. I just spoke from the heart. I told them I was one of them, a trucker. I told them I knew their struggles, their challenges. I said I didn't have all the answers, but I promised to always listen to them, to always treat them with the respect they deserved. I said that together we would bring back the spirit of family that had once made Pioneer Freight a great place to work. It was probably not the most eloquent speech, but it was honest, and they seemed to appreciate it. When the meeting ended, I was surrounded by colleagues wanting to congratulate me, to hug me, to ask questions. It was a strange but wonderful feeling. After so many years of being just another driver, I was now the center of attention. As the crowd began to disperse, Mrs. Roberts came over to me. "Congratulations, Mr. Jack," she said with a warm smile. "That was an excellent speech." "Thank you, Mrs. Roberts," I replied. "It still hasn't sunk in yet." She smiled a knowing smile and then leaned in a little closer. "Some people shine by shouting," she whispered. "You shine by being silent. Never forget that." I stood there in the middle of the now emptying warehouse thinking about her words. The man who had been humiliated just 2 days before was now in charge. It was a victory, but I knew it was also a huge responsibility. I had to prove that she had made the right choice. My journey was far from over. It was just beginning a new chapter. My father used to have a saying, "The strength of a trucker isn't measured by the noise he makes, but by the miles he quietly endures." I didn't fully understand what he meant back then. I thought it was just one of those old sayings that sounded nice, but didn't have much practical meaning. I only truly understood it many years later at Pioneer Freight, facing the daily challenges of the job. The road is no place for quitters. It's no place for complainers. It's a place for those who know how to hold the steering wheel steady through the sharp curves. For those who know how to be patient in a 10-mile traffic jam. For those who find comfort in the solitude of the open road. That first day as head of operations, I did not sit in my new office. I spent the whole day in the yard. I talked to the drivers, the mechanics, the dispatchers. I listened to their frustrations, their ideas, their hopes. I saw the yard with new eyes now. I was no longer just another driver among many. I was the guy responsible for making sure everything worked, for making sure every load reached its destination, and for making sure every driver came home safe. Tom, the young driver I had helped on the side of the road, came up to me. "So, boss," he said with a grin, "how's the first day?" "Don't call me boss, Tom," I replied. And still the same old Jack. The same old Jack with a much bigger paycheck he teased giving me a light nudge. We both laughed. "I promise I won't let you down, Jack," he said, his tone turning serious. "I know you won't," I said, patting him on the back. As the sun set, I stood there for a while, longer, watching the rhythm of the yard, feeling the evening breeze, and smelling that familiar scent of diesel that had been with me my whole life. I remembered Mrs. Roberts' words, "You shine by being silent." It was true. I had never been one to make a lot of noise, to impose myself by shouting, or to step on others to get ahead. I always believed that good work speaks for itself, that respect is earned, not demanded. That incredible and humbling experience taught me that my time of swallowing insults was over. I would no longer bow my head to anyone. But I also wouldn't become someone like Michael. I wouldn't use my new position to humiliate others, to show off my power, or to get revenge on anyone. I decided right then and there to lead the way I always believed in, by example, by respect, by a job well done. The real lesson from all this isn't that he who laughs last laughs best. The real lesson is that character is destiny, and in the long run, integrity is the most powerful engine of all. And that is my story. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen. If you want to hear more stories from the road, make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss the next one. Take care of yourselves out there.